I stood in my new downtown condo, looking out at the city lights, and for the first time in 6 months I felt like I could breathe. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Emily. Another message I wouldn't read. Before I tell you how I ended up here, how I went from being kicked out of my own home to watching my stepchildren lose everything they thought they had, let me take you back to where it all started. But first, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because this story shows exactly what happens when people forget who they're dealing with. 25 years. That's how long I'd been in those kids' lives. Emily was 5 and Jake was 3 when I married their mother, Susan. Their biological father had left when Jake was still in diapers, disappeared somewhere out west and never looked back. I remember the first time Emily called me Dad. She was 7, we were at her school play, and she ran off stage straight into my arms yelling, "Dad, did you see me?" My heart nearly burst. Susan had tears in her eyes. It felt like we were finally a real family. I wasn't rich, but I worked hard. I was a construction manager, put in 60-hour weeks sometimes, but I made sure those kids had everything. Every sports fee, every school trip, every prom dress. When Emily wanted to go to Boston University, the tuition was astronomical. I took out a second mortgage. When Jake crashed his first car sophomore year of college, I bought him another one and never mentioned it again. That's what fathers do. That's what I thought I was. Their father. Susan and I had a good marriage. Not perfect, but solid. Built on trust and respect. When we got married, I'd already bought the house in Portland. It was a 3-bedroom Craftsman in the Hawthorne district, needed work but had good bones. I'd saved for years for the down payment. Bought it 6 months before I met Susan. When we married, we talked about putting her name on the deed too. She said no. She had debt from her first marriage, medical bills from when her ex left, credit cards she was still paying down. She said, "Tom, you earned this house. Keep it in your name, I trust you. If anything happens to me, you'll take care of the kids." I agreed. It seemed responsible, practical. I had no idea that decision would save me 25 years later. We raised those kids together. I taught Jake how to throw a football, how to change a tire, how to tie a tie for his first job interview. I walked Emily down the aisle at her wedding 3 years ago. Her biological father didn't even send a card. I was the one who stood there in that church, holding back tears, handing her over to her husband Marcus. But even then, even in that moment, she introduced me to her new in-laws as my mom's husband, Tom. Not my stepfather. Not my dad. Just Tom. It stung, but I told myself it didn't matter. Action spoke louder than words, right? Susan got sick about 18 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. She fought hard, we all did, but cancer doesn't care how hard you fight. She died 6 months ago on a Tuesday morning with me holding her hand. Emily and Jake were there too. Susan's last words to me were take care of them. I promised her I would. The funeral was hard. Everyone told me how sorry they were, what a great husband I'd been, how Susan was lucky to have had me. Emily and Jake were grief-stricken, as any kids would be losing their mother. I tried to be strong for them. I cooked dinners, I organized the memorial service, I handled all the paperwork and the estate stuff. Susan didn't have much, some savings, her jewelry, her personal items. No life insurance because of the pre-existing condition. The kids took what they wanted from her things. I didn't argue. They were her children. Things started to shift about 2 months after the funeral. Emily came by the house more often, but not to see me. She'd walk through rooms, looking at things, measuring spaces with her eyes. Jake started asking questions about the house's value, what the market was like in the neighborhood. I figured they were just processing, maybe thinking about memories. The Hawthorne district had gotten expensive over the years. Houses that I'd bought for $160,000 were now selling for $700,000, $800,000 easy. Our place was probably worth close to $750,000 now, maybe more. One evening in late September, about 4 months after Susan died, Emily asked if we could have a family meeting. She and Jake came over on a Saturday afternoon. Marcus, Emily's husband, came too, which should have been my first warning sign. They sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had 1,000 family dinners, and Emily put a folder in front of her. Professional. Prepared? Tom, she said, and her voice had this cold edge I'd never heard before. We need to talk about the house. I'd been making coffee. I turned around, confused. What about it? Jake and I have been discussing it, and we think it's time to sell. She said it like she was announcing the weather. I sat down slowly. Sell? This is our home. Your mother and I. Our mother lived here, Emily interrupted. This was her house. But she's gone now, and frankly, it doesn't make sense for one person to be living in a 3-bedroom house in one of Portland's most expensive neighborhoods. My chest tightened. Emily, I've lived here for 25 years. Your mother and I built our life here. You grew up here. Jake leaned forward. Yeah, exactly. We grew up here. This house has our childhood memories. Mom's memories. We should be the ones to decide what happens to it. I don't understand, I said, even though I was starting to. You want me to sell the house? We want to sell the house. Emily corrected. Jake and I have been talking to a realtor. The market's hot right now. We could easily get $750,000, maybe more. We split it 3 ways, that's $250,000 each. You could buy yourself a nice condo, maybe one of those retirement communities. You're 62, Tom. This house is too much for you to maintain anyway. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Split it 3 ways? Well, yeah, Jake said like it was obvious. Emily and I are Mom's kids. You were her husband. That's how estates work. This isn't an estate, I said carefully. And your mother didn't own this house. Emily's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Of course she did. You two were married. We were married, yes. But the house was mine before we married, and it stayed in my name. Your mother and I agreed on that. The room went very quiet. Marcus whispered something to Emily. She looked at the folder in front of her, then back at me. That's not possible. You're lying. I'm not lying. I can show you the deed if you want. Then show us, Jake demanded. I got up and went to my office, pulled out the fireproof safe where I kept important documents. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. I brought back the deed and laid it on the table. Thomas Richard Morrison. My name, sole owner. Purchase date, March 2000. Marriage date to Susan, September 2000. Emily stared at it like I just slapped her. This has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake. I bought this house before I met your mother. When we married, we decided to keep it in my name because of her financial situation from her first marriage. That's convenient, Marcus said. Real convenient that you never mentioned this before. I never needed to mention it. This is my home. Our home. I never planned to sell it. Emily stood up. Her face was red. So what, you're just going to keep living here? In Mom's house? In my house, yes. That's bullshit, Jake shouted, also standing. You think just because your name is on some piece of paper, you get to keep everything? You were married to our mom for 25 years. In Oregon, that makes it community property. Actually, I said quietly, it doesn't. Oregon is not a community property state. And even if it were, the house was my separate property before the marriage. I maintained it as separate property throughout the marriage. Your mother knew this. She agreed to it. She wouldn't have agreed to this. Emily was shouting now. She wouldn't have let you steal our inheritance. I'm not stealing anything. There was no inheritance because your mother didn't own this house. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. You son of a Jake moved toward me, but Marcus grabbed his arm. Emily gathered up her folder. Fine. Fine. We'll see what a lawyer says about this. You're welcome to consult a lawyer, I said. But the law is pretty clear. They left. Slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. It was a photo of all 4 of us at Jake's high school graduation. The glass cracked right down the middle. That was in September. For a few weeks, I thought maybe they'd cool down, come to their senses, remember that I'd raised them, that I'd loved them, that I'd been the only father they'd ever really known. I texted Emily. No response. I called Jake. Straight to voicemail. I tried to reach out through Marcus. He told me to stop harassing his wife. Then came October 15th. I'll never forget that date. I came home from work to find Emily, Jake, and a man in a suit standing on my front porch. The man introduced himself as Brad Connolly, attorney at law. Mr. Morrison, he said, I represent Emily and Jake in the matter of the estate of Susan Morrison and the property located at this address. There is no matter, I said. I already explained this to them. Nevertheless, my clients believe they have a legal claim to this property as heirs of their deceased mother. We're prepared to pursue this claim in court. However, to avoid costly litigation, we're offering you a settlement. He handed me a document. I scanned it. They were offering me $200,000 to sign over the house. $200,000? I laughed. But it wasn't funny. For a house worth $750? And it's my house to begin with? Our research shows that your wife contributed financially to the household during your marriage, Brad said smoothly. Her income helped pay the mortgage, utilities, maintenance. Under Oregon law, she may have acquired an ownership interest through those contributions. A judge might see it that way. Might, I repeated. You're threatening me with a lawsuit you might win, to pressure me into giving up my home for a fraction of what it's worth? We prefer to think of it as offering you a reasonable exit, Brad said. I looked at Emily and Jake. Emily had her arms crossed, looking away. Jake met my eyes with pure hatred. These were the kids I'd raised. The kids I'd loved. Get off my property, I said. Mr. Morrison, Brad started. Get off my property. You have 10 seconds before I call the police for trespassing. They left. But Jake turned back at the end of the walkway. You're not our father, he yelled. You were never our father. This is our mom's house and you're stealing it from us. I raised you. I shouted back, something breaking inside me. I raised both of you. I gave you everything. We didn't ask you to. Emily screamed. You're not our dad. You'll never be our dad. They drove away. I stood there on the porch of my house, the house I'd worked my entire adult life to pay for, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Not when Susan died. Not during any hard time in my 62 years. I felt utterly, completely alone. I went inside and I did something I hadn't done since Susan's funeral. I cried. I sat at that kitchen table and I cried like a child. I'd given those kids 25 years of my life. I'd given them my money, my time, my love. I'd been there for every scraped knee, every broken heart, every triumph and failure. And to them, I was nothing. Just mom's husband. Just an obstacle between them and money. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, like an enemy, then I'd show them what happened when you made an enemy of me. If blood was all that mattered to them, then they'd learn that blood didn't pay mortgages. Blood didn't buy houses. Blood didn't mean you deserved something you hadn't earned. I called my lawyer the next morning. His name was Richard Chen, and he'd handled my will and estate planning for years. I explained the situation. He listened carefully. Tom, he said when I finished, you're absolutely in the right legally. This house is yours. They have no claim whatsoever. I know, but I want to make sure they understand that. Completely and fully. What are you thinking? They want me out of this house so badly? Fine. I'll leave. But not the way they planned. Richard was quiet for a moment. What did you have in mind? I told him. He tried to talk me out of it at first, said I was acting in anger, that I should wait until emotions cooled. But I was done waiting. I was done being reasonable with unreasonable people. I'd spent 25 years being the bigger person, being patient, being understanding. Where had it gotten me? Are you absolutely sure? Richard asked. I've never been more sure of anything. All right then. Let's do it. The plan was simple. I'd sell the house. Not to Emily and Jake. Not to split the proceeds with them. I'd sell it to someone else, take the money, and move somewhere they'd never find me. They wanted me gone? They'd get their wish. But they wouldn't get a penny. Richard put me in touch with a real estate investor named Patricia Wong. She bought houses for cash, usually to flip them or rent them out. I met with her at a coffee shop. She was about 50, sharp-eyed, professional. The house is in Hawthorne, I said. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, completely paid off. I'm looking to sell quickly and quietly. How quickly? Within the month. She raised an eyebrow. That fast usually means motivated seller. Which means lower price. I'm aware. What would you offer? She pulled out her phone, looked up the address, checked some comps. In that neighborhood, if you listed it traditionally, you'd probably get $760,000, maybe $780, but you'd wait months for the right buyer, deal with inspections, negotiations, all that. I could close in 3 weeks and offer you $650,000 cash. I did the math in my head. $100,000 less than market value. But clean, fast, final. Make it $675 and you have a deal. Patricia smiled. You drive a hard bargain for someone in a hurry. $665 and that's my final offer. Deal? We shook hands. She had her attorney draw up the papers. I signed them 2 days later. The closing was set for November 7th, exactly 3 weeks away. For those 3 weeks, I lived in that house like a ghost. I packed up my things slowly, carefully. Every box was a memory. Photos of Emily's dance recitals. Jake's Little League trophies. Susan's books, her favorite coffee mug, the quilt her grandmother made. I kept some things, donated most of it. I wasn't being sentimental anymore. I was being practical. Emily and Jake didn't know any of this was happening. They'd stopped talking to me entirely after the lawyer incident. I saw Emily once, at the grocery store. She saw me too and turned down a different aisle. That hurt worse than any words could have. Jake sent me one text message during those 3 weeks. Hope you're enjoying our house while you can. Our lawyer says we have a good case. I didn't respond. Let them think they were winning. I found a condo downtown. 15th floor, 1 bedroom, modern, clean, nothing like the old craftsman house. It had a view of the city and a doorman, and everything was someone else's problem to maintain. It cost $320,000. I bought it cash. Moved my remaining belongings in over the course of a weekend. November 7th arrived. I met Patricia and her attorney at Richard's office. We signed the final papers. She handed me a cashier's check for $665,000. I deposited it immediately, transferred the amount for the condo, put the rest in investments. By 5 p.m., I no longer owned the house in Hawthorne. Patricia did. I sat in my new condo that evening, looking at the city lights, and I felt something unexpected. Relief. That house had been my home for 25 years, but in the last 6 months it had become a prison, a reminder of everything I'd lost. Susan. The kids I thought were mine. The family I thought I had. My phone rang. Emily. I almost didn't answer. But I wanted to hear this. Hello? What the hell did you do? She was screaming, crying. What did you do? I'm sorry. What are you talking about? The house. There's a woman here with a moving company saying she owns the house. She has the deed. She's saying we have to leave. Ah. Patricia moved fast. I appreciated that. Oh, that, I said calmly. I sold the house. Silence. Then, you what? I sold it. You and Jake wanted me out, so I left. I sold the house to someone who actually appreciates its value. You can't do that. You can't just sell it. Actually, I can. It's my house. Was my house. Now it's Patricia's house. We'll sue you. We'll take everything. Sue me for what, Emily? I sold my own property. Perfectly legal. Your lawyer will tell you the same thing. You bastard. Jake's voice now. He must have grabbed the phone. You sold it out from under us. Where are we supposed to go? Something cold settled in my chest. The same place I was supposed to go when you tried to kick me out. Figure it out. We're family. No, I said quietly. You made it very clear I'm not your family. I'm just Mom's husband. Remember? You said I was never your father. You were right. A father protects his children. But you're not my children. You made sure I knew that. Tom, please, Emily was crying. Please, we can work this out. We'll split the money, just like we said. Please, I'm sorry, the money's gone, Emily. I bought a condo. Invested the rest. There's nothing to split. You can't do this, Jake yelled. That was our inheritance. Your mother didn't leave you an inheritance. She left you me. I would have taken care of you forever. Given you anything you needed. But you didn't want me. You wanted money. Well, you can't have both. I hung up. Blocked both their numbers. Blocked Marcus too. The calls kept coming from other numbers. Friends, relatives, people I'd known for years. Some sympathized with me. Some thought I was cruel. I didn't care anymore. I changed my number. Cut ties with anyone who couldn't understand why I'd done what I'd done. About 2 weeks later, Richard called me. Tom, you should know that Emily and Jake did consult an attorney. About suing you. And? The attorney told them they had no case. The house was your separate property, you had every right to sell it, and you had no legal obligation to share the proceeds with them. They can't do anything. Good. They're apparently living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Beaverton now, having some financial difficulties. Jake lost his job last month and Emily's income alone isn't covering everything. I waited to feel guilty. To feel sorry for them. I felt nothing. Tom, Richard said carefully. Emily's been asking mutual friends to reach out to you. She wants to apologize, wants to reconcile. Tell her I said no. You don't want to hear what she has to say? Richard. My wife was dying in a hospital bed and she made me promise to take care of her kids. I kept that promise for 6 months after she died. I tried to be there for them. They responded by trying to steal my house. By telling me I wasn't their father. By threatening to sue me. I'm done. I understand. I just wanted you to know. That was 3 months ago. It's December now. I'm settling into my new life. The condo is quiet. Peaceful. I've started going to a gym nearby, made a few friends there. Started dating someone, actually. Her name's Carol and she's a widow too. Lost her husband 5 years ago. We have coffee sometimes, talk about what it's like to rebuild a life after loss. She knows about Emily and Jake. She says I did the right thing. I'm starting to believe her. I heard through a mutual friend that Emily and Marcus are struggling to make rent. Jake's working at a warehouse now, hourly wage. They're not starving, not homeless, but they're learning what it's like to actually work for what you have instead of expecting it to be handed to you. A part of me feels bad about that. A very small part. The rest of me thinks it's exactly what they need to learn. I kept one thing from the house, Susan's engagement ring. Not the one from her first marriage, but the one I gave her when I proposed. It's a simple sapphire, her birthstone, nothing fancy. She wore it every day for 25 years. I found it in her jewelry box after she died. Emily and Jake didn't want it. They wanted the expensive stuff, the gold, the diamonds. I keep the ring in a small box on my dresser. Sometimes I look at it and I remember the woman I married. The woman who trusted me with her children, who believed I'd do right by them. I did try, Susan. I really did. But they didn't want a father. They wanted a bank account. And I couldn't be that for them. Here's what I learned. Blood doesn't make you family. Love makes you family. Respect makes you family. Showing up every day, being there through good times and bad, that makes you family. Emily and Jake had my blood by choice for 25 years. I chose to love them as my own. But the moment things got hard, the moment they had to choose between me and money, they chose money. That told me everything I needed to know. If you're in a similar situation, if you have stepkids or adopted kids or any kids who you're raising as your own, here's my advice. Love them with everything you have. Give them everything they need. But protect yourself too. Don't be naive like I was. Don't assume that love will be enough, that they'll see you as their real parent just because you act like one. Sometimes they will. Sometimes they won't. And you need to be prepared for both possibilities. And if the day comes when they show you who they really are, when they tell you you're not their family, when they try to take from you what you've worked your entire life to build, believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't try to win them back with money or guilt or memories of better times. Just walk away. Protect yourself, protect your peace. Because here's the truth. You can't force people to love you. You can't force them to respect you. And you definitely can't force them to see you as family when they've decided you're not. All you can do is protect what's yours and build a life with people who actually value you. I'm 62 years old. I spent 25 years being a father to kids who weren't mine. I don't regret those years. I loved Emily and Jake. I loved raising them. I loved being their dad, even if they never really saw me that way. But I don't regret walking away either. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let people face the consequences of their own choices. Emily and Jake wanted me out of their lives. I gave them exactly what they asked for. And I'm finally free. So, if you've made it this far in my story, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with anyone who needs to hear it. Because this isn't just my story. This is the story of anyone who's ever loved someone who didn't love them back. Anyone who's ever been used by the people they trusted most. Anyone who's ever had to make the hard choice between being used and being free. Choose freedom. Every single time.